This is the Henry's Child Podcast. Am I crazy? Or am I just raving?
I'm very excited to share this podcast with you because a very, very rare occasion happened where I was able to get Rich Clinton and Andy Makin together. And there may be an 8-hour time difference and thousands of miles that are of separation. But boy, these two, man, for not talking in 21 years, they certainly have a lot to say. And it was a really, really great episode. Ton of fun to edit. Just made me laugh and grin ear to ear. And hopefully during this crazy COVID thing that we're going through right now, you can use a little bit of smiling yourself. Before we jump into it, let me actually get to some housekeeping. So first off, all shows have been postponed, not canceled. At this point, our website is going to be the best place for information to get any sort of detail about performance dates and the record release from Henry's Child. So speaking of the website, I actually took some of this downtime that we had and I rebuilt the site from the ground up specifically for the Listen Closely record. So very, very soon, I will be swapping that out. Now, when I swap it out, that is when we actually have physical merchandise. So if you want to be able to buy the record before the show, you'll be able to buy it through our website. And of course, there'll be music. There still is the newsletter list to sign up to and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that'll be coming out soon. And of course, I'll probably end up doing a podcast just about changing the website because it is different and you'll probably need a little guidance with as far as navigation goes, but it's a really big jump and I'm super glad that I did it. And I guess my last bit of housekeeping before we get into this awesome podcast is a question. Would you be into coming up to Salem for an impromptu show? Now, I can't publicly plan anything, and I certainly don't want to go outside of the guidelines that have been set up for us, because right now, those guidelines are what is keeping our state down as far as cases are concerned. So we take this seriously, very seriously, and we want to honor what the powers that be have sort of declared. But at the same time, we want to play for you. It's really, really important that we play for you. So we may not have shoulder-to-shoulder people and all that sort of stuff, but if we were able to set something up, write me directly through the website, or you can just write me at henryschild@henryschild.com and let me know, and I'll put your name into a hat, and we will practice some social distancing and play some really awesome music. The reason that I can offer this is because our practice location is zoned commercial/industrial. So it's totally within our wheelhouse to be able to play at loud volumes at any time. So just go ahead and keep that in mind. So like I said, today we have a very, very rare and cool treat to share. It's Andy Makin, who is a vocalist. And he was the vocalist in Henry's Child for one record that we cut 21 years ago. It's got a very, very compelling, very, very cool story that Rich and Andy are gonna kind of clue you in on. Andy's just a good dude, and after not talking to him for 21 years, just reaching out over Facebook and putting this thing together, just reminded me that I've got a friend and a brother over in a completely different continent. It's pretty amazing stuff. Plus, the record we cut with him wasn't that bad. And when we met him, he actually makes reference to Adrian Smith of Iron Maiden's band Psycho Motel, which is kind of around the time after he'd finished that record that he came over to the States and hung out with us for a little bit. But you know what? I'm not going to ruin it for you. I'm going to let you listen to this great conversation between two super intelligent, super funny musical muses. Enjoy.
Yeah, the whole social media thing, I think we were so fortunate to not have it for so long in our upbringing. But the issue that I have with it, I mean, I got quite badly hit by it early on for me with social media when it was like sort of MySpace era, that kind of time. Yeah. And I was sort of gently sort of dipping my toe into it and go, oh, fuck yeah, I don't like this. Because it was just idiots and arseholes. And just like an arsehole, everybody had an opinion as well. And it was just demonstrably bad for human beings, I think, considering that the internet's such a wonderful, fabulous thing. And then you just add people.
It's true. I mean,
I know.
The thing I don't like about it is, it all comes down to personal responsibility. And if you're not good at personal responsibility, because nothing's making anybody get online and just throwing a bunch of bullshit out there. They're doing that. Yeah. Nothing's prompting them to do that. And then conversely, you've got people who just like, I'm not going to get on it at all because, well, again, it's, flex that muscle a little bit. Have a little willpower, and I think it's good to walk into the lion's den every once in a while and just don't engage.
Well, the other thing you can equate it to is on the massive voyeuristic level that it is, right? Sure. That we just peer into other people's lives, and that was always popular. That was popular on TV when we were watching it back in the day, and all it is just an extension of that. Let's face it, now we're looking at everybody's fucking crib, right? Excuse my French, but it's true, right? And we can do that, and then. Do you know what I had it explained to me the other day? He said, you know what social media is? It's like basically watching porn. But the difference is that whilst you're watching porn and they're all getting it on and everyone's having a lovely time, suddenly you decide that you're going to take all your clothes off and jump in there as well. Well, don't be upset when people get upset, right? Yeah. So.
Exactly. That's a good analogy. And I say that all the time too. If we got this big distorted idea of what is a right in this country, and I try to point out the difference between a right and a privilege all the time. Half the things that people are saying is a right, or they consider to be a right, is actually that's a privilege. We're just letting you do that. There's no sealed document that's saying this is something that nobody can infringe upon.
No, and yeah, absolutely. Just interject on that a minute. As soon as anybody jumps up in your country and has, well, we have the right to arm bears. Well, okay.
Exactly. Like,
doesn't actually say that, but
well, it might as well.
Because
in this country there is most certainly a let's arm the bears segment of. There has to be. There's everything else. There's nothing that trips me up anymore when I see it. I'm like, yeah, well, what do you expect?
I know. Yeah. Because you guys were, back in the day, you guys were so anti that. For me, coming from a country that didn't have that, and still doesn't.
Right.
I remember us going, we're driving down to Creswell.
Yeah.
And there was two hunters just walking up, and they just had their hunting rifles on their backs. That's what it was.
Right.
And they didn't have the day glow orange thing to make sure that when you're absolutely hammered that you don't shoot a human being.
Right.
Right. But they were just walking nonchalantly and minding their own P's and Q's and everything else. And everybody just drove past them and it was fine. But for me, it was like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Sure.
And also, what was the guy's name? Walt?
Well, yeah, Walt. Yeah.
With his concealed weapons license.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And that was, for me, it was just an absolute culture shock,
Oh,
and not one that I could judge. It was just something that I witnessed and freaked me the hell out,
Oh, sure.
But going back to your point of things not being written in stone, like you were saying, yeah, I totally agree. That's the thing. It's the perceived right of people to do things, and no. They just have a responsibility to make sure you're sheltered and you have running water and shit. But the other stuff, no. Right. You can't, scream on a Thursday night, I want my fucking ice cream, and that's my God-given right as a human being on this planet. No, it's not. It really isn't.
No.
But yeah, those kind of people absolutely drive me nuts.
Yeah, we seem to be living in this country, a little bit of the Veruca Salt rule right now.
Talking to my wife about it, and because I don't watch my news, because I put on MSNBC every morning or CNN just to see what chaos is going on, because I find it much more entertaining because I know there's a lot of sea between us. Whereas if I put my news on and it's the same arseholes doing the same thing just in a different accent, I can't watch it because it terrifies me.
Sure. Because
you just see the lie coming out straight out of their mouths, whereas in America it's just like, oh my God, it's that clown again. That's fine. I think it's far easier to laugh at the perceived dumb fucks in another country when you really don't want to look at your own.
Oh, of
You know,
course.
we have a shit ton here.
Oh yeah. Well, I think everybody does. Well,
Yeah.
Maybe,
well, apart from maybe New Zealand.
I was just going to say New Zealand or possibly a Scandinavian country or two or four.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but they're freaking weird, right?
Yeah,
The
sure.
fucking Scandinavians, you know, smoking a pancake and all that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, of course. And they, just sounding like you're speaking backwards all the time is a little interesting too.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, it's like they're gargling porridge or something. Right?
Yeah. I probably should introduce who I'm speaking with. We just started going like we used to do, right?
Yes, like yesterday.
I have the distinct pleasure of speaking to Mr. Andy Makin of so many different projects that we're going to get to at some point in this conversation. But the one that brought him to this is the fact that he joined our band, Henry's Child, way back in 1999. And I was speaking with Thom a couple days ago, and we knew that we somehow connected through the internet, but we don't remember how, because was it MySpace? And I looked up MySpace. It was 2003 when it started. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Do you recall?
It was your website, I think.
Really?
I do recall.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I do recall. Yeah, it was your website. I was on dial-up, because this is 1999.
Right.
And we'd just moved from yogurt pots and string in this country. And I had, what was I doing? I'd just finished with, well, not finished, but I was in a band called Cycling Motel, and I'd done that thing, and I was looking for another band, basically, because that was on its arse and nothing was happening. And I was just looking for a band, and I was looking on the internets, as you do, because it was a new thing. And I was living in a very small town in southwest Wales, and there wasn't a music scene, and I was a bit shell-shocked from the sort of machine that I'd been in, this sort of reasonably well-backed and possibly good big band. Right. So from that, I wanted something, musically I was like, oh, I'm a writer now. I'm good at what I do, apparently. People keep telling me. Let's go and find a band that I like. And I listened. It was just a website. It was your website or something. I don't know what I can't remember what I'd searched for, but I was just looking.
Yeah.
And you had put on your website, you were looking for a singer, something like that. I'm sure it was something like that. I just listened to tracks, that's all, and I liked them. Yeah. That was it. and then I looked down and went, oh, it's in bloody America, isn't it? Of course it is. And I think all I did was I messaged, obviously it was you, but I messaged you off the site just saying how much I like the music. And that was about it, I think. And that was where the dialogue started. So it wasn't, I looked at you guys online and went, oh, I want to join that band. It was literally, oh, I like that. That's really good. There's something about that I like that. Yeah. And so went, well, I shall say I like that to these people.
to these foreigners.
They can make of that what they will.
Right.
You know? And that was it, really.
Yeah, it's a little like technology we are, like in World War I, right? Where they're still using horses.
Yeah, totally.
So we had a mix.
Oh, yeah, but no. I think that was one of the things, though, was that you had a .com.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
My band, that was supposed to be all the mod cons, had http://p.this.that. whatever we were hosting with and blah, blah, blah. And it went on for like a fortnight. It was like a Dutch shipping company kind of address, right?
Yeah.
So nobody ever clicked on the site. Nobody ever visited it. Nobody. And you had a website that worked. So I think that was probably a thing as well. It was like, well, this is a new age. Look, they've got a website. They know what they're doing. At least they've got some sort of savviness about them.
Somebody in the band is not a Luddite, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, we got to think.
Because you got to remember, 99. Nobody had websites really. Not smaller bands.
No, there were no. Until I still believe that it had to have been like GeoCities or one of these things that came along, or Angel Fire that you could
sure
put up some cut and paste type site that we used to see, but actually having a full on dedicated hosted yourself type site. No, we were really early into that. Also, Thom was really into technology, and of course my Uncle Gary, who's I've told the stories before. I'm 18 years old, and of course I grew up in the Bay Area, and I grew up in Silicon Valley. So I mean, we were on BBSs in the 80s off of the Atari computer with the not even dial up to the point that you put your phone in the cradle on a 300 baud modem.
Yeah. I only saw that in movies, man.
Well, I lived it. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
you lived it.
It's just a story now. I wouldn't say that it was enjoyable.
No. But yeah, I totally get it. Yeah. Oh, I mean, my dad had this. It was an Amstrad, so that's the British company, CPC 464. To put my nerd hat on for a second, which was really, really cool. It was a sort of contemporary of the Atari and the Commodore 64, right? Yeah. Except it had, like, the tape deck was attached to the keyboard part, to the computer part. Oh yeah, it was snazzy as hell, man. I mean, the games were shit,
of course,
but it looked cool. Yeah, and the keys made the right tappy noise, like in war games.
Yeah, you know? That's how the Atari was too. Well, the Atari 400 had a membrane type keyboard, but then you went up to the 800 and it had the proper electric typewriter, type.
That's the one.
Yeah, the tactile that you just, still to this day, I miss that, clunkety clunk,
Oh yeah, totally.
Something about it. So back to music. Yeah, we're very tangential, aren't we?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm going to fuck up your podcast, man. just yakking with my friend.
So, how did you get into music in the first place?
Oh, Christ. Okay. So I'm not from a musical family, but I'm from a musical fan family. So my father had one of those massive 70s hi-fis, like the freestanding units, and you'd plug them all into each other, right? With a sort of glass door that you'd open. So it was this sort of holy thing in the corner.
Right.
And so vinyl, of course. And Dad would always play, oh man. So he loved the Kinks, he loved Queen. What else did he like? Oh, ELO. It was odd, really. Oh, Kate Bush, of course, when she came over. That was amazing. But that a little aside, which we'll have a lot of, but my Kate Bush story, there's two Kate Bush stories. My first Kate Bush story with Dad was, we were at my granddad's, my grandparents' house in Birmingham, right, in England. Yeah. And it's 78, right? This is a memory I have, and it's cast in stone. 78, 79, I think it's 78. Because that's the album came out. Yeah. And Top of the Pops is on, right? Mm-hmm. Which I'm sure you heard of. They play Wuthering Heights. And it's the whole her live performance on Top of the Pops with the wavy arms and all that shit.
Right, yeah.
Now, bearing in mind, at 78, she's 18.
Right.
She's flapping about like a loon and singing Wuthering Heights. And we've never heard any of this before. And it's on my grandparents' little black and white TV in the corner. And my dad just stands there. And my dad didn't swear much back then. I was only a little kid. And he just stood looking at her for like 3 minutes. And what the hell is this shit? And left, right? And went into the kitchen. And I think by the time we got home to Wales, where we lived, he'd gone down the shop and bought the album. Because he couldn't get it out of his head. Wow. Right. But I mean, when he first saw it, the look of disgust on his face when he's watching this girl sing. I mean, when you first hear Kate, it's like, what? Right? And he was a huge Kate Bush fan as well. And ironically, Mum went, "Oh, I know Kate Bush," because when she was giving birth to me, the lady opposite her in the ward, her best friend was Kate Bush.
Really?
Yeah. So The Dreaming. Right, yeah. That whole album.
Sure.
The one about pregnancy, where breathing out and breathing in.
Oh yeah,
that's about right. That's my. We call her my auntie. She's not my real auntie. It's a very British thing. But my auntie's pregnancy, that was written about her.
Really.
So what happened then was Dad was like, "Well, I really like Kate," and my mum said to my auntie Pauline, "Hey, David, my dad, David, he really is into Kate. He's just bought her album. It's fantastic." And so a couple of years go by, and she sends him all her albums on vinyl.
Wow!
but she didn't sign one of them.
Oh man!
And I've got them. They're in the loft, but in the attic. But none of them are signed. So
no providence.
Cow.
It's
no providence at all.
Right?
No, apart from a signed photo we've got. But. Yeah, why was I on about that? Yeah, so so Dad was into all sorts. He was into sort of rocky stuff and sort of the harder Beatles stuff, so the Lennon kind of stuff.
Sure.
So by osmosis, it just leaked onto me, really, I suppose, to for want of a better phrase. But yeah, and so the appreciation of it, the sort of religious aspect of music, which was, this is an event. when we put this music on, it's not television, it's not radio, it's not a companion as such. We sit there and immerse ourselves in it, right?
Right.
So it's like radio as a companion or television as a companion. Music is not. Music is not background music. Music is not lift music. Music is not that inane chatter. This is something, an event that you listen to. So when we would put an album on, whether I hated it or not, and I'll speak of one in a minute, but it was literally an almost religious event, right?
Sure.
Apart from when he got really into War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
And that scared the absolute shit out of me. I really, even to this day, right? Even to this day, the oolong bit, right?
Yeah.
Still scares the crap out of me. And, you know, he would put it on, he would crank it up, and he'd be away. And that's the one album I couldn't listen to with him.
Yeah.
So it was weird as well, because he was sort of, I guess, especially the ELO stuff as well, Mr. Blue Sky, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
He was a little bit of a sort of British prog fan.
Yeah.
And I didn't get into prog until I was a grown man, like old man, you know, which was funny because I was in Henry's Child and we were kind of prog, but I was never really into prog. Right. You know, not until later on when I started counting out what albums I've got and, oh, I guess I am then. You know, but yeah, so that was my introduction to music, was that. And then becoming a musician was, oh God, it was, you know, school age. I was about 12, 13, 12. I'd been about 12. And there's a drink over here called Lucozade, right? Which is like Gatorade, I guess. Yeah. I think, right? And it was an advert on the TV, and it had our Olympian guy, Daley Thompson at the time, so this is like 1980 or something, right? And he was like a triathlete, and it's this little advert of him on the blocks, and he just runs the 100 meters, right? And the music that goes with it is the beginning part of Phantom of the Opera. Oh, okay, yeah. So when he gets off the blocks, it's go yeah, diddle 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 diddle, right? Yeah. So that was it. I had to have whatever that was. Sure, yeah, that magic. And so so that was my intro into sort of metal, really, I suppose. And I went in school then, on my lunch break, I went to the local record store, and they didn't have the first album. They had Killers, and I bought that. Yeah. And that's it. I just didn't stop buying stuff then, you know. So that was my intro into it. And then it was like, well, how do they make those sounds? I need to make those sounds. And I remember putting Killers on and listening to Ides of March, the intro song, and just leaping around the room, and I didn't know why. Yeah. But it was something heavier and harder than what my dad had listened to, and it was something I hadn't really heard before, and I just wanted to do whatever that was because it just gave me the fizz. It just gave me so much joy. And so I started playing bass then. A neighbour had a bass. I bought a bass off him. So I started playing bass, and then that was cool. And then it was like, but it wasn't cool. It wasn't like drums. So the next instrument was drums. And then I was playing drums for a local blues band with these like seasoned old dudes who like just playing blues stuff. So that calmed me right down. So I had to learn how to play properly. Right. With, you know, get feel and time and get an idea and sense of time. And from there, then I played this little gig in a sort of area of Pembrokeshire in southwest Wales, right out on the beach. There's like a little venue on a beach there, and I was playing the drums for this blues band, and there was another drummer in the audience who wanted a guest for a couple of songs, and I said, "Well, I'll get up and have a sing, see how I get on," because I, you know, always singing in the car or whatever. So I went and had a sing on these two little blues tracks, and well, I thought, oh, it went all right. I went over to the bar and ordered me a pint, and this girl came up to me and said, "Oh, you're a much better singer than you are a drummer." And I took that as a compliment. But I think I was probably pretty bloody awful at both. But yeah, so I went, I'll be a singer now then. And I thought it was going to be a lot less carrying, but you get to carry everybody else's shit. But there we are. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, so that was my intro into music, I guess. Yeah, you know, I have a relatively parallel story. My dad wasn't musical at all either, but he was a music lover. Yeah. Same kind of thing. It was just by osmosis. It was just around. You know, my dad was a little older than your dad. We came up from a different generation. But the one thing my dad always instilled in me was he just
there's no parameters. If you like something, you like something. He never gave a fuck
Yeah.
what anybody else thought about anything. He never let it. And if somebody didn't like something, it didn't bother him either.
No.
So he had traditional country music, but then he had the Moody Blues and Neil Young.
Oh shit, yeah.
We're talking about a guy that was born in 1938, so he graduated from high school here in 1956. So he, rock and roll was just barely coming in too, and he liked old rock and roll, but he was much more of a. He basically went from Sinatra to the Moody Blues and things like that.
Nice.
That's the stuff that he was doing. And he was as bad as I am. He really was when I was a kid, because I remember just tagging along with him. I'm like you. I'm an only child, so I just follow my dad everywhere. And we go to the record store all the time, and he'd let me buy something, and I buy stupid stuff. Like, I don't know if it's stupid. It's kid stuff. I buy like Brady Bunch albums and things, and
of course.
But then I would wind up stealing his stuff and listening. I can't remember the name of the Moody Blues album, but it has that long intro in the beginning, and it's all kind of psychedelic, and it has that weird cover, and there's something on a threshold of a dream.
It goes on for a fortnight at the beginning, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous. It's real hippie trippy shit. Yeah.
And I would listen to it. I'm like probably 7, 8 years old, and I listened to just absolutely trip out, but it was engaging. I didn't know why. That always tripped me out about my dad. But no, he was damn near an audiophile when I was a kid, because he was changing stereo gear in and out all the time, buying speakers. I remember him helping my uncle out. My uncle bought a quadraphonic stereo system, and and he couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, He just had
neither could my dad. Yeah,
and no rhythm either. Just anti-rhythm, Maybe he was prog and he didn't know it. Maybe it was all the time signatures. We didn't
7/8.
Yeah, my dad lived in 7/8.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it was the same kind of thing. And then our school, when I was in junior high school, they had a music program, and I brought home the papers, and they asked if I wanted to do it, and I said, yeah. He was a fan of saxophone, so I played the saxophone, and that was my introduction. And then, of course, rock and roll came along and did the same thing. You know what song did it to me that, like, what pushed you was Hot Blooded by Foreigner.
Oh, wow, okay.
That guitar intro, and it just seemed so rock and roll, just...
Yeah.
And just Lou Graham's voice, and it's so rock.
Yeah.
It's just rock.
Yeah.
And the energy behind it, and I was the same way, and it was just bouncing off the walls.
It's energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the energy of it, I think. Yeah.
The thing is, when you're a little older and you grew up in a different time, things came to you a lot slower than they do now. I mean, I'd turn on the radio and record the radio with my little cassette player just to figure out who was who. Because if I was lucky, the DJ would tell us who was who, but then I'd write it down, and then I'd go to the record store and buy it. I remember it just became an obsession with me, trying to find out who people were. I'd buy these Rolling Stone record guides, and I wanted to find the whole genealogy of everybody and every band. And still, still to this day, it's like, oh, that guy came from here. I wonder what they sounded like, kind of.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, we had family in the States as well. My dad's sisters, I got a bunch of cousins on the East Coast, cousin on the West Coast, and my cousin who's a kind of similar age to my dad, would send tapes of a local radio, like the local rock radio, and shit like he would send to Dad. He was desperate to get Dad into Barclay James Harvest for so fucking long, and Dad just refused. Just wasn't going to happen. But so what he would do is you just send stuff from the radio, right?
Yeah.
And what I loved about it as a British kid growing up born in the 70s, but kind of growing up in the 80s, right, is that we had 3 channels of TV, and a lot of sort of 6 o'clock at night stuff. Thursday night, Friday night was American shows, right? Like the A-Team and BJ and the Bear, and like one of my overriding memories of going to bed at night as a kid is hearing Mum and Dad turning on MASH downstairs, right?
Yeah.
So Suicide is Painless is one of my lullabies. I can go to sleep on that, right? So Americana was very much in our household and in the UK, right?
Yeah.
And so my cousin would send these tapes, and I'd listen to the music. The music would be great, whatever. I didn't care. It was the announcements I was listening for. like this American voice and talking about local things that were going on, and it was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
You know? And then you start listening to these bands that are not necessarily getting to the UK. There was so much more of a dividing line, I think, between British bands and American bands back then than there is now.
Oh, for sure.
You could tell not necessarily where they were from. You couldn't do the California East Coast thing unless it was like a punk thing, right, or a hardcore thing. But if it was just general rock, it was definitely you can tell that was a UK band, and you can tell that was an American band.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it is funny because for the most part, I always was drawn to British bands, still to this day.
Yeah.
But it makes sense when I look at the styles that I always grew up and that I liked. We just didn't offer as much, especially for like straight rock bands in the 70s. I mean, you had Zeppelin. That's the thing. Zeppelin and Sabbath and all those bands were still going, and they were huge. And we didn't offer much. I think the biggest thing that we had at the time was possibly Leonard Skinner and Aerosmith. We didn't have a lot. All the rock bands were coming out of Britain, which same thing with metal. It just kind of worked its way. It was always Priest and Maiden for me, and all the new wave of British heavy metal. Because since I'm a little bit older, it was just the natural progression. I mean, Black Sabbath, and we knew Judas Priest before the new wave of British heavy metal. I mean, going all the way back to Sin After Sin, and
Yeah, well, they were.
Yeah,
they were very much before. It's just I think that the wave was ridden when they were coming. Took advantage of it. But yeah, absolutely, they were very much around before then.
Yeah, and Maiden too. 74, 75, somewhere in there was when they kicked it off. And Saxon was, for some reason, I don't know, Saxon really, really was my band. And I was always a little bit of a contrarian when it came to my friends, and they would be really into the biggest band, and I'd be like, this, like Thin Lizzy. Thin Lizzy's still top dog to me, always will be.
Yep, totally.
And everybody in this country knew him from one song.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'd have to explain to him all the time. But there's all this.
Yeah.
Going all the way back.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, Lizzie, man.
I think the thing that really gets me as far as being an artist and a musician is people that hit a singularity. And you hear Phil Lynott, it's Phil Lynott. You hear Thin Lizzy, it's Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
They're a singular band. They sound like themselves. And whether you like a band or not, if somebody can actually achieve that in all this noise, that's something special. U2 is like that. The Who was like that. You hear U2.
Even The Cure.
The Cure, exactly.
It's funny because I detested with a passion The Cure for so long, mainly because I didn't like the people who liked it when I was coming up as a musician. There was especially the small town I'd end up going to play gigs. There was like the rock guys, the metal-y rock guys, and then there was the goth guys over here, and they also played Cure and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I liked The Mission, and I liked Fields of the Nephilim and stuff like that, but The Cure I just couldn't get a handle on. And it was only like a couple of years ago. I feel quite embarrassed about it now, but it was only about a couple of years ago when I went, do you know what? I'm going to revisit this without that bollocks prejudice that I had, and just listen to it, and I really like it. and it's because of that individuality. I think it's coming to tired ears when you hear something that has a presence and, like you say, a singularity. Suddenly your tired ears are happy to listen to it again.
Sure.
Because it's not that compressed to fuck normal stuff that we're hearing all the time now. There was something with a strange voice, a strange accent, a delivery, a different way of playing it, whether it was on the beat, ahead of the beat, behind the beat. We just don't have any of that anymore.
No, and it's not formulaic because they didn't. There is no way, because we know this as being musicians. There's no way that Robert Smith sat down and said, "This is what I'm going to do."
God, no.
They just became that. Same thing with Radiohead. They just became that.
Oh, absolutely. Jesus Christ.
Pink Floyd, they just became that. You go, all these bands, it is a combination of the people together that make that. And that alchemy that happens, sometimes it's magic and sometimes it's just pedestrian.
Yeah, it's an organic process, It can't be done Within the confines of ones and zeros. It just can't.
No. Even though everybody's tried to work that out over time.
Oh Christ, yeah. Oh yeah, totally. It just doesn't fucking work. Even now. I mean, I'm doing demos and stuff at the moment, and within the confines of a click, within the confines of a metronome, I find it annoying,
right,
more than anything, because I feel boxed in by it. And I don't, I mean, you can stretch the beat and you can move with the beat and move with the pulse and move with the timbre and the tempo within that restraint. But I haven't got eye-to-eye contact with a drummer who can slow down and speed up when we both want to at the same time. That beautiful moment, that magical moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? When you are in that room and you are staring at your rhythm section and you're all going to go, now let's just bring it back a bit, drag it back, right?
Sure.
You just don't get it unless you're in a room full of people who are like-minded.
No, it's
who can play.
Well, for better or for worse, the music that we play is an interactive music. Mm-hmm. It demands a push and pull. When you're in a room and you're playing music at ear-blistering levels, so you can't actually talk to each other. You just learn this second communication of just looking at each other and reading body language, giving the cues. It's like being a conductor with no arms.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just giving those cues to say, okay, ready, here we go, or pull it back. Just kind of, or give them the nod. That everything's cool and and just the face.
Yeah, that's it. It's that stank face. It's that thing where that's nasty. I like that. Right. It's funny. I was watching that guy Rick Beato.
Yeah, sure.
Chap.
Yeah.
He was like, "What makes this song great?" Whatever. And it was an Alice in Chains one, and I should remember the title. And it wasn't Bones because it was Man in a Box.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And it's after. I don't know if it's after the chorus, but they go back to the verse riff, right? Junt, diddle, junt, right?
Yeah.
But they come down like 5 BPM, right? From the chorus back to the verse. And it's not click. It's eyes on everybody, let the drums and bass drag it back. And it's like 5 BPM.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just blows your mind. It just wouldn't happen now.
I understand the idea of keeping everything in time, perfectly in time. We work with a click on and off. I've never really dug it. I feel that I like, especially live. I mean, you want that natural push and pull and that organic, that's what makes it live. The whole word live energy,
Yeah, exactly. Well, we work with a click a lot. It's getting a drummer who can work within those clicks. Like the silence between that click, right? If you can do that, if you can have movement within that, or even if you can take the click away for a brief period and come back to it, right? That's the real skill set. I've met a few drummers over the years now who can do that, and if you can do that, then that's where the genius lies, because you can still have that freedom and that live feel. So the time is right. But what happens is if you're in that confined box of the beat of that click all the time, then you don't get the feel.
No.
And that's the bit where you breathe in and out. That's the open space. And we've been lucky. A couple of drummers we've used, and they are really good at doing that. But it's hard, man. It really is.
Yeah, we're lucky right now. Our drummer Toby, he can do that. He's just one of those insanely talented guys. He's a multi-instrumentalist and
don't you just hate people like that?
Yeah, I know. I'm looking east. Just the whole idea of not thinking and just creating. That was the other thing I was speaking. I just bounce all my ideas off of Thom, because Tom's willing ear, thank God.
Yeah.
I know you're a Ray Bradbury fan too, but one of my favorite quotes of all time happens to be a Bradbury quote, and it's just thinking is the enemy of creativity. Nothing good ever came out of just thinking about something. You can't think. You got to go to the edge of the cliff, jump off, and build your wings on the way down. And I love that. That's just that's what drew us to this in the first place. That's what drew us to rock in the first place, was that wild abandon. It can do anything. It can be anything it wants to be.
Yeah.
There should be no rules.
The other thing, of course, I think as a writer is that you have to be able to accept the shit as well. The shit ones that come out, right? You know, the absolute dog turds that you have to get out of your head, because if you don't, they're going to stay there. So, you know, those demos that you've got, wherever they are, and we both know you've got them, man. You know, the ones that it's like, oh, I wish I hadn't gone down this route because this sucks, right? But you got to finish it. It's a shit book, right? Like the book had an open, like the first sentence of a book, which is so important, right? That opening line, that opening gambit, that thing that draws you in past the cover.
Right.
So that's the little trickle of an idea that you have, and you go, oh man, I've got to follow this down the rabbit hole, and then you realize that the rest of it is shit,
Right?
You know, but you have to, and you have to learn that lesson as well as a writer. Is that, oh man, I'm gonna have to get this out. It's literally like having a really bad curry. Right? And you shit something god-awful out, and then you move on and hopefully eat healthy and have something decent come out, right?
Right. Good analogy.
I am on fire with my analogies today. I really am.
Well,
Yeah, but I mean, it's true. You have to learn to fail as well. You know,
sure.
that's part of it. It's you know, and then you get that little gem. It's like, yeah, I do know what I'm doing.
Well, there's no success without failure. There's a yin and yang to everything. I mean, there's no good without something. Has to weigh against something else to give it any validity. Of course, like you said, we've both done it. Just absolutely just dribble. And the thing I've noticed, it's like is the cut and paste kind of thing. It's like you'll come up with a really good riff, and then it becomes what I call a cul-de-sac. You just can't get out of it. And it's like, how do I work this into something else? And what else do I put with it? Yeah. And sooner or later, you won't even be thinking about it. And you go, that works with that. What the fuck?
I find, no, it's true. I find with riffs like that, it's, you know, I've had this riff. It's like Eddie, the guitar player in a band, he the other day, he played a riff and it was just great. I was like, well, that could go with this bit. And he said, I've had that riff for like 10 years. You know,
yeah, exactly.
And it's one of those ones where, you know, like you'll write a riff and you think, now, is this a song or is this, is this advertising baby wipes? I don't know what this thing's doing. Is it just a rinse repeat thing for 30 seconds on a TV thing or radio or something? Is it useless? Has it got potential? Has it got legs? Can somebody else sort of tape something onto this to make it work? Is there a bridge in here? Is there a chorus? You know, and sometimes it's just a great riff that just won't go anywhere. It just refuses.
Exactly. See, that's the beauty about it. And the thing I love so much is collaboration. You know, that's what makes it work. It's like there is a different pattern, different thinking pattern with another musician. It's like, oh yeah, what about this? It's like, there you go. Yeah, you've been carrying this around your back pocket. I've been carrying this around in my back pocket.
And, man, I miss that so much. I hate writing songs on my own. I do it a lot because I have a quick work ethic with it. And I'm pretty quick at what I can do. Just rough demos, and I can get them out. I can get vocals, guitars, bass, and drums done, and job done. But nothing beats that moment of creation in a room where you're just jamming something out and something happens.
Yeah.
That's just as good as a crowd screaming back at you. It's that moment. It's one of the reasons why you do it. You know.
Oh yeah. And then you do that, and you're in a room with a bunch of other like-minded fellows, and you create something, and then you go play it live, and then the crowd likes it too. It's like, yeah. Okay.
Oh, geez, yeah. How did that happen?
That's a double positive, and those are rare, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So back to what do you consider to be your first real band?
Real band.
Like what, gigging and actually kind of feel like, hey, we can almost call ourselves musicians.
Well, I was in I guess. I was in a band called Preacher, right? Which was like mainly covers, and then we started doing originals. And when we started doing originals, I felt vindicated in my choice. Up until then, I was just singing other people's songs, and it was fun and all that. But it's not you, right?
Right.
And also, I sing a certain way. I've always, when I was younger, I always tried to sing like other people, and it always ended up sounding like me, which at the time I thought was a bloody curse. Now it's got me a little bit of work, but I could never be in a covers band because people go, you don't sound like Billy Joel. Well, neither does he now, But yeah, that kind of thing. Like certain covers bands, their singers, like wedding singers, they're really good at doing that kind of morphing into the character enough, that you can get by. Whereas I couldn't. It always sounded like me honking on somebody else's song. Right. So when we started writing original stuff, I was like, so okay, I can do this. This is cool. So yeah, that was a band. Went for a sort of couple of years, really just local in Wales. Didn't do much. And, we didn't have anywhere to record or any of that sort of stuff. I think we eventually did a little demo. And then I was off. Then I joined a band in the nearest big city to me. Well, big city. Nearest city to me, which was Swansea, which is where I live now. And that band then, after a couple of years, I auditioned for Psycho. So, yeah, bits of bands here and there. Didn't know what I was doing, where I was going with it. I just knew I wanted to play music. And so, a couple of sort of local bands, we'd get decent support with somebody, band at some point, Yeah. But that was about it, really, It was just, and I answered an advert in Kerrang! Magazine, which is the UK metal magazine, right?
Yeah.
And that was the Psycho thing, and I auditioned. I was up with a load of other people to be the singer for that. So that was like my first big band, I guess. Well, so big band, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. In case people don't know what you're speaking.
Oh, right, yeah. So Psycho Motel is Adrian Smith's solo band, I guess. He had 2 albums out, State of Mind with a different singer called Solly from Norway, amazing singer. And then myself, when I was very early 20s, we had an album out called Welcome to the World. And we did that in 97. Mike Sturgis on drums, who also was in a band with Scott Gorham, and Gary Liederman on bass. Simon Hanhart produced it, and we had guests on there, like Dave Murray from Maiden was on there, and Scott Gorham himself played on one of our songs as well. So that was like it was a band that could afford the rent.
Right,
put it that way,
right. Were you a bit deer in the headlights initially?
I'd like to say I was, but I wasn't. I have this arrogant ego, I suppose. I think around my ability.
Thom calls that cocksure.
I guess, yeah. It was only everything else in life a complete fuck up, and just as everybody else is, just learning as you go along and try not to hurt anybody as you come up. But with music, I do have an agreement with myself that I won't think I'm shit, because I'm not. I'm good at what I do.
Right.
It's not to everyone's taste, but I like it, and I think that's. I had enough ego to step into the room and be equal, and I was very lucky that I was treated equally as well, which is the important thing. I think going into a situation like that, if you're treated like you have to come up, and pay your dues and all that shit, then yes, I would have been deer in the headlights. But as I was welcomed into it like an equal, and I was put in to write straight away, that gave me the boost that okay, I'm supposed to be here. I can do this.
Right.
So it's also how I was treated. I think I was treated very well as an artist, anyway. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's validation. I mean,
yeah,
they chose you to be in, and you're playing with major players, and all of a sudden it's like that's got to pull you up. That's got to pull you up to another level, even in with your own thoughts about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, Adrian, I don't think really gets that much. Well, of course he gets credit, but he doesn't get credit as the songwriter that he is.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly talented guy. He really knows song structure. He knows harmonies so well. He's so good at picking out harmonies, and the man can write a chorus. He really can. And so for me to step into that and be told, well, we've got free rein, let's see where it goes. I've got a little riff, let's try this.
Yeah.
You have to step up. You either step up or you leave the door and go, I can't do this, sorry.
Right.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, who you play with absolutely elevates you. To this day, how can I put it? It's like a president.
A real one?
Ones, but like a real one where you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room.
Sure.
Right? Which qualifies now, but for different reasons, right?
Sure.
But I mean, right now it's not. I'm surely not the smartest guy in the room, and neither is that. But that pencil's got a higher IQ than the guy right now. A president who surrounds himself with real smart people, he can only get better. He can only elevate himself. And
sure.
So to be in a band where the musicianship is on a higher pay grade than you've got to step up then. So yeah, it was a massive learning curve, but one that you didn't realize you were on until you'd written stuff, and by then it was like, well, this is good. This guy who's had #1 record says it's good. I agree.
Right. It's a little bit. I still Well, it took me a long time to get over the whole imposter syndrome feeling. It's like, yeah, am I a musician? What am I? Especially when so much is based upon actually whether you make money at it or not. It's just a strange thing being an artist. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's I had that as a guitar player to be a guitar player because I started sort of properly playing guitar rather than just using it as a writing tool, but literally for the love of it. I haven't been playing that long really compared to you or compared to the guys in my band and stuff. And so for me, I was having a hard time. Am I a real guitar player? Can I do this? Am I just like fluffing and bluffing and and all that? It took me a long time to go. No, actually, I'm bloody good, and I'm good at what I do. And
right.
It's my voice on the guitar, right? And I was very lucky to get that early on, and I didn't necessarily sound like every other player out there, which was either a hindrance or a help. I'm not sure. But your point about the validation of it. With regards to a fiscal quality, like actually making money out of it, absolutely, you are judged on, how, what are your figures? What do you do here? I mean, we were talking to record companies before this COVID-19 thing came down, right?
Yeah.
And we went up to, we were up in the Midlands, so the middle of the country, to talk to one of the record companies up there. And one of their first questions is, well, what's your Spotify like?
Yeah.
I don't fucking care.
Right.
Right, it's that shit.
Yeah.
Right, and you got to have all this. What's your socials like? What's your social media? I don't. Well, I don't care, but I have to now. Apparently, okay. So I'll jump into that ball pit and see what infection I get.
Sure.
It's absolute bullshit. But that the validation of what tours have you done? What how many albums did you sell? Not. How did the song affect a certain person that comes up to you or emails me out of the blue? I still get people now messaging me about songs I wrote, 25 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And that when that happens, that's when I get validated by someone who's listened to one of the songs I wrote or I was part of, and they took it and it means something to them, whatever that is, right?
Yeah,
that's success. That's absolute success.
See, that's to me, that's a sign of a true artist. The difference, and I've made this. It's a kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment for years, but if you put industry behind something, it changes something from good to bad. You have health, and then in this country we have health industry. That's like, okay,
yes,
you just change something into making a money-making machine. Same thing with music. Music is wonderful, and then music industry, well, you're trying to profit off of it. So it changes the whole, the free form idea of just being creative. I mean,
absolutely.
Like you've noted, when somebody, same thing. I mean, the only reason that Henry's Child is around at this point is because something that we did 25 years ago, well, actually, let me change that, 27 years ago to start now, just somehow resonated with people.
That's it.
Yeah. And you can't, how can you quantify that? You can't.
You can't. It's, but then, I mean, it's tough because you end up getting a little bit wanky about it, and the Van Gogh who didn't get really noticed until he was dead. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So there's a fine line to sort of straddle, isn't there, between, I'm an artist and I create, and then there's okay, and can I have 2 black coffees, please? Right. There's that side to it. It's like, oh, I'm an actress. Oh yeah, what restaurant do you work at? It's that kind of vibe, right?
Sure.
It doesn't alter the fact that she's an actress, and doesn't alter the fact that you're a writer. But yeah, there's a, how can I put this? There's a Neil Peart quote, isn't there? We're not pretentious. We're not pretending. And he's absolutely right.
Right.
Whereas there are people out there who are, complete bullshitters when it comes to, my art. I'm suffering from my art.
Oh, of course.
Try something else then, man.
It's still hard for me to just utter the word artist. I'd rather call myself a creative because that's what I do. I create. It doesn't necessarily, I can't stop it. There is no valve I can turn off in my head that just says, no, whether I like it or not, probably if I don't have some way to get rid of it, I will probably go insane. So there has to be a conduit. There has to be a release, and I would do it all the time, and I do it all the time. I play every day, and I create every day, and for a long time, it bothered me that I can't do anything with it. Like it felt like I had a factory, and that it was just piling up in the corner, and it's never getting distributed to anybody that needs to hear it or wants to hear it.
Sure.
But then the other side of it was, it's like, well, what would you do without that?
It's the same as painting, right?
Yeah.
So you say your little studio, and that's where it's all on canvas or whatever, right? Whatever medium, all on canvas. Now, are you at some point going, well, nobody's seeing these, so what's the point? It's not that. It's literally getting it out of view.
Yeah.
And whatever happens to those paintings then, when people see it and interpret it, whatever, it won't be what you thought. You just wanted to get it out.
Right.
That's all you wanted to do. Exercise a demon, move on. Next song, right? Yeah. And it's that. It's so, to say I'm an artist, it should smack slightly of a fraud. It should smack slightly of pretension, because if we're not safeguarding what we're doing, then we will fall into the trap of being pretentious arseholes and going, oh yes, I'm an artist and I suffer from my art. Or in actual fact, we're just trying to get this shit out of our heads.
Right.
And how eloquently you do that is art, I think.
Oh, I agree. Is it just scribbling on the wall, or is there some order to it? It's refined scribbling, right?
I think so. It's like, well, even Pollock joined up the colours a bit, right? So
sure, yeah.
It's I mean, who are we to say what art is and isn't? I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole to go down. But I think, if we're just creating and it's coming out and it's a song list built up somewhere, that doesn't change the validity of the music that you've written. It just means that not anybody's heard it yet. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
I think when, like, going back to your point of how much money have you made, well, that's an industry thing. That doesn't concern me.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I'd love to be able to pay the rent with my music, and over my career, if you want to call it that, which it isn't, because I've had many a day job, but the career that I've had, certain aspects of my career and certain timelines, I've actually been able to pay the rent. So that to me is a massive success. My little PS4 in my living room, I paid for that for a session I did.
Right.
I mean, that to me, I'm a winner.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I didn't intend for my money to pay for stuff, my music to pay for stuff. Sorry, but that's not your thought, because if that's the thought that comes out of you as you're creating something, then you're in the wrong job.
So coming back to when you joined our band for. This, I was thinking about it the other day. Number one, it's been 21 years.
Jesus Christ.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
Number two is just how much we accomplished in so little time.
Oh, shit, man.
It's like 3.5 months,
Yeah, I still think about it now. The simple fact that we wouldn't have stopped. We just wouldn't have.
No.
If time and things that happened, me having to come back here, and then all the shit that happened for me here, which is a nightmare. But if we'd just been able to continue, we'd still be doing it now. I firmly believe it. I just firmly believe it. I think we would have been that weird band, that fucking weird band. What's that fucking weird band? What's the name of that fucking weird band? It would have been that, right? We would have been that, but on a bigger scale. I think because it was lovely, because it was being welcomed by people who could play what you guys could play, right? It was already a band, but I'm envious of you guys, because just for the simple fact that you're still doing the same thing, right? And by the same thing, I mean it's you and Tommy, and it's Andrew as well now, and it's still going, and it's your band, and it always has been.
Yeah.
So 21 years ago, when I was with you, you were already a band then, and it's the same band, right? I've never had that. Always wanted my own band, and that was you guys, So going back to my point, the amount of work we did, we were all there,
Yeah.
We're gonna work on stuff today. Of course we are, because we're here.
Right. That's what we do.
Yeah. I don't think it would have ever stopped. It would have just got better.
It was our Pinky in the Brain idea, right?
Yeah, we're going to take over the world, right?
Every day.
Yeah, totally.
What are we going to do?
Yeah, every fucking day.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we miss.
That's what it was.
You know, even me and Thom talk about it now. That's the thing that changes everything is time. And the fact that you can't, it's such a commodity that, and it bothers me now with this whole lockdown, shut in type, you know, we can't get together and do anything much. And all we have right now is time.
Yeah, exactly.
We're being forced to have more time than we, you know, it's like a bank of time right now, and we can't do anything with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with us. The guitar player in my band is Yannick Gerst-Tech in Iron Maiden, right?
Yeah.
So I don't see him in the summer. So it's normally about 3 months. Well, actually, no. The band's out for 3 months. Maiden are out for 3 months, but it's usually the techs and stuff, the roadies, they're out 4. So summertime, I don't see him, and it's just what it is. But it means my band is just on hold. Right. It really is, because there's not a lot you can do. It's just not how it works without, you know, the other guy being in there. It just doesn't work, right? We've had personnel issues. We've had all sorts of nonsense, right? So coming end of last year, we did the tour with Steve Harris's band, and then we were looking at January. We were going to be in the studio doing a few bits and pieces, which we ended up doing. And then we were shopping for record labels and tours. We already had some stuff in the summer, just a couple of dates which we could fit in. And we had a European tour coming up November. Yeah. Right? We were going to be out for a month, and it was a decent support with a big artist, right? No buy-on. We were going to sell a shit ton of merch. We were finally going to, okay, we can crack this, you know? Yeah. And then this thing came along. And fair enough, okay, that happens. But I can't get together with a guy who's normally away. Because he's locked in his house, right? You know, and it's just frustrating as fuck. But it is what it is, you know. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with it. It's just you just can't hang. No, you know, even that.
I like to see an outcome. I mean, I'm a very much there's a pile of rocks over here on the left, and those pile of rocks on the left need to be put into a pile over here on the right. Yeah. If I can see progress, it drives me forward, and the lack of progress just kind of slows my roll a little bit. You know, we should also mention that the name of your band is 9 Miles Down, your current band. Yeah. No, Blacklight Machine was your band before, right? But that worked. You still have the same drummer, right? Thom,
yeah, he's not with us now. He sort of sessions with us.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that was I was a local Swansea band. Blacklight Machine was a couple of guys I knew from years ago. And we got together, and I tried to make it work. But I'm very proud of some of the music we came out with. But funnily enough, Eddie, the guitar player in 9 Miles Down now, was our last bass player in Blacklight Machine. I know it's so convoluted, but yeah, I know. But so I struck up a friendship with Eddie, and you'd love him. He's a brother. He's one of us, you know. Yeah. He's a lovely guy, and I think that's the other thing as well with bands. It's not necessarily about the musical ability. There has to be a level where everybody can play, and you have to have that certain professional level. But I would rather have someone who I would like to spend, I don't know, 8 hours traveling in the back of a bus, who's on the same level as me, than some virtuoso who wouldn't be able to last an hour. Right. You know? So there's that side of it as well, and that goes back to Henry's Child. At the time with Jarrett, Doug, you, and Thom, and being welcomed into that, and everybody got on. Everybody had a purpose. Nobody really whined. Everybody just wanted to play music and write music and do stuff. Right. So I think personnel as well is so important. Getting the right people in your band, your family, it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I wrote something on Facebook a week ago or so. We gotten together with Brian and me and Thom, and it's just, we didn't even play. We just talked. And the thing was, this all happened because of music. It's just a bunch of strangers, just like us speaking right now. This all happened because of music. Strangers become friends, friends become family, and what a wonderful thing. What a random, wonderful thing to happen just out of nowhere.
So there you have it, part 1 of the Andy Makin Rich Clinton conversation for the Am I Crazy or Am I Just Raving podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, because next week I'm going to be releasing part 2, where Andy and Rich talk almost exclusively about music. And what's really great about that episode is that we get to hear Andy's take on American bands and Rich's take on English bands. It's very, very cool. And listen, as usual, if you enjoy this podcast, please hit up the respective platforms and give us a 5-star rating. What that does is that actually takes their algorithm and gives them incentive, them being the platforms, it gives the platforms incentive to keep us around. And we know that we could all use a little bit of that extra love these days. Also, if you haven't subscribed to our newsletter list, you really should. If you go to our website and click the downloads button on top, it will take you to a section where you leave your first name and your email address. And when you hit the submit button, you get an extra track that was not released on the record. Our website is henryschild.com, HenrysChild.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.